This is going to be fun.
Okay.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. Today's guests, Dreama and Addie Walton. Yeah. And I'm so glad that you guys are here. This is a big day for me because it's my first ever 2-guest podcast. So I feel a little bit nervous, but I'm mostly stoked about it.
Cool.
Thank you. Jokes aside, to tee it up a little bit, how excited I am for this conversation. This is also the first time I have a movie star on my podcast. So, but Dreama, you have a film called The Dreama Team. Mm-hmm. You also, though, have your own podcast, Beyond the Trail podcast. I'm trying to think what else. You've got your nonprofit, which I'm excited to talk about that. Cool. You're a mom, obviously, all of these great things. And then on top of it, I think at least when the film was being filmed, still a full-time regular job too.
I still have it.
So
same job.
Juggling all those things and found the time to drive up here to Denver and meet with me and let me pick your brain. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate it because I'm somewhat new. I've been running for years, but I'm somewhat new into the ultra space and I've loved how the community has been, but I saw the Dreama Team film and it was so inspiring. I was telling you off camera that I brought my production manager with me and we watched it and we took all these notes and we were like, wow, from obviously the story, which is what I'm excited to pick your brain about. But the production quality was amazing. And just for anybody listening, you got to check out the film. It's, it's inspiring. I left there like, wow. And at the time when I had watched it, I had already signed up and I was midway through training for my 100 miler and I left there like more terrified than ever and more excited than ever.
Right.
But I'd love to start there. There's obviously some story within the film that I'm excited to hear more about, but I'd love to hear the background of the film. What made you guys decide to document, that journey and how did that whole thing come together? Because it's so neat.
Actually, it all happened very serendipitously. I didn't reach out to them and the way that we met, the way that the filmmakers and myself met was actually through one of my sponsors, the Sands Mill Bar. He's a co-founder of that bar. He was at a co-working space in Denver and knew Steve Vanderhyde. And I guess Steve and him were talking and Steve had mentioned we're looking to do a passion project in the outdoor space, maybe something around 12 to 15 minutes. Do you know of anyone? And Corey, the co-founder of Sands, he was like, yeah, actually I have this athlete in the Springs. I think she has a pretty cool story. Maybe I can set up a Zoom call and you guys can meet. And so that was the beginning. We met over Zoom. We met a few times over Zoom. They just kind of started asking me about my why. And, when you ask me why I kind of got started running, that all leads back to my childhood and, running being the only sport that I could do at 16 and 16 is when I was allowed or able to do a sport. And so, they just heard my story, really thought there was something there. And, it was all just a passion project. So
what did it, and I don't, I've only known of you since the film, but what did it, walk me through kind of the experience or your mindset, because you get pretty vulnerable. I mean, it's a very in-depth, look into your why and things like that. And I'm curious what that process felt like putting yourself out there like that. Did you even know that was going to go the way it went? Were you ready for it?
No, I mean, I had, in a way, I had, because we did our calls over Zoom and everything, we had built up a little bit of, a little bit of background. They, were asking me about my life and I was pretty vulnerable with them. And I told them my life story for the most part, which felt a little strange because I did not know them. And, but when they came and they met with me, I knew that we were going to do like a 3-hour interview, like a sit down interview. And I just remember like, yeah, it was hard. It was rough. Like my voice was shaking at times, or crackling, you know. I had, I remember I like had to go to the bathroom in the middle of it. I'm like, oh, can we pause so I could go to the bathroom? I went to the bathroom and I had hives all over my chest and neck because I was so like nervous. And also, it was just, I was telling them a lot.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And so I remember coming back and sitting down and I was like, oh my God. Like,
It's so refreshing though, like from a viewer getting to see that side of the story. Because I've got a philosophy for a long time where I think that vulnerability is a superpower.
Okay.
And that people crave
sure.
authenticity.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I think has been coolest for me to experience in the ultra running community has been, you know, I mean, geez, you'll share some miles with people, especially on the longer distance runs. And, you know, you hear, you know, the real stuff out there, not just kind of the surface level things. Exactly. I think that it's, I mean, by nature, anybody who's towing the line at an ultra is probably a quality, you know, probably a quality individual.
Sure.
But I think it's remarkable that you had to have the courage to, you know, sit in front of the camera and share your story like that. What's it been like seeing the reaction, like when you're sitting in the, you know, sitting in the theaters or, you know, at the film festivals and you're watching people? What's that like?
That actually makes it all worth it. I have been quite embarrassed in the past to share my life story. It wasn't until this whole process that I actually did share a lot of it. I think I was ashamed of maybe my family situation. I was ashamed of the fact that like I wanted to go to college, but I didn't have enough money. And so I ended up, you know, joining the Air Force, which I'm very happy and proud about. But there was a lot of, I think, like my upbringing that I was embarrassed to share. And so sitting in the room, watching people watch it for the first time and their reactions sort of makes it all like worth it. Yeah, I've had people come up to me after like crying, hug me, tell me, I've had people tell me that they have people in their family that are special needs. You know, one gentleman told me that his wife was in a wheelchair, and there's been parents who have lost children that have come up and, you know, hug me after and just tell me like how much it meant to be able to watch that. And, you know, a lot of it is the storytelling too, you know. I think we all have a story. Like everybody has a story. I think I'm kind of grateful or appreciative that I had these two filmmakers kind of wanted to tell it, and they did it in a really beautiful way. Yeah. And I just think, I don't know, that ability to share, because to your point, you know, everybody has a story. Yeah. Everybody's going through stuff. Right. Everybody has the thing that, you know, they're overcoming or whatever it might be. Yeah. And even if they're different, getting to see the way that you've thrived and, you know, just even being willing to tell the story even. Yeah. I think it empowers people. I love it. For sure. Like I get all jazzed up on it when it's like, for sure. I don't know. It sort of feels almost triumphant. You know, it's exciting. I think that maybe that is something that I have, I don't know, that I've been able to do is like take a bad situation and turn it into something good. I mean, I have improved my life. It could have ended up very, very different. And I am proud of myself for that part, that I've, just been able to kind of move on, keep going forward, keep moving forward, which, you know, is also like a message in the documentary. You just keep moving forward. A microcosm. Yeah. For everybody, because just to provide a little bit of context, and I don't want to give away, obviously I want everyone to go and, you know, watch the film, because it's such, to your point, it's storytelling that's done in such a beautiful, powerful way. Right. So I don't want to give away, you know, all of it. But I do think, would you mind, just for people to have some context would love to hear,
some of that story with your sister and just sort of the background on it?
Sure. I'm the oldest of, there were 3 of us. So I had 2 younger sisters. When I was 4, the youngest was born, but she was born with spina bifida. The doctors gave her 2 years to live and didn't really know, like what her future held. But yeah, she ended up at 4, she had brain surgery. We actually thought she was going to maybe not make it through that surgery, so we all had to say goodbye. Then she ended up making it through. She did come out of that surgery with one of her sides of her body being paralyzed. So where she used to only be paralyzed from the waist down, she was then paralyzed half of her, body and the waist down. Yeah. And then she ended up having to get a G-tube and all kinds of, there were all kinds of complications that came with the spina bifida disease So, I don't know. I helped my mother a lot, like as a young child. I mean, I knew how to catheterize her at a very early age. She couldn't go to the bathroom on her own, so I helped with that at her age. And so I was like the older sister, and I kind of just took on a helping hand role very early on. But there was a point where my parents wanted to move to St. Croix, the U.S. Virgin Islands, from Florida. And so my dad went over to the island earlier than the rest of us, kind of got us a place to live. And then the rest of the family moved over. We were there for about 2 years before my youngest sister, she just didn't wake up one morning and was kind of blue and lethargic. We called the ambulance to pick her up, and she actually was medevaced to Puerto Rico. And while we were in Puerto Rico for several months, because she was actually in the hospital for 3 or 4 months, my mother ended up meeting someone and decided she wanted to leave my father. And because of that, my dad decided that us girls would all move back to Florida. So we left St. Croix. And my mother actually came with us. She had to accompany my little sister on the airplane. And so she came back to Florida with us. And my middle sister and I started school. And one day we went to school. And when we came home, my mother was gone. And that was the last time I had seen her until I was 14, I believe.
And that was...
I was 11.
So years went by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So years went by. And when my mother left, then it was my dad and I were responsible for my little sister. And my dad had to work a lot, and he was kind of out working. And so I would come home from school and I would take care of her. The nurses took care of her for 16 hours a day, so it was only 8 hours.
Oh,
but it happened to be the 8 hours that when I came home from school, my dad would take her from the nurses, especially in the beginning, and then he would hand her off to me, and he would go back to working. Later, the nurses kind of knew what was going on. They would just transfer her to me.
Yeah. And to clarify, and at that stage, you're young high school age?
Yes.
Middle? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from 11 to 16. So my dad quickly found a woman that he decided to marry. She was super abusive. She had a son that lived with us, and she favored him and just did not like the girls. Was really, really abusive. So we, there was this situation where she was able to get my little sister moved out of our home. And once she did that, she, like, within a week or two, she told the rest of us that we were all moving to Maine, where she was originally from. And yeah. And so I was 16, and I told them that I wasn't going. And some of my reasonings and the way that they allowed me to stay is that they were doing drugs in the home and selling drugs out of the home. And so I just told them that I was going to turn them into the police if they made me move.
And so they let you?
Yeah. And so I bought a travel trailer and parked it outside of my grandparents' home and just finished high school and worked. And
at 16?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have 1,000 questions. I think it's fascinating because, usually when people are met with a significant amount of adversity, it can either harden them or soften them.
Yeah.
Based on how we react and how we respond to it. You got hit with multiple bouts of incredible amount of adversity. And I don't know you well. Obviously, this is the first time I'm meeting you in person, but it seems to me like you've struck this balance of soft and hard. And I mean that in a complimenting way of, you've got this sort of like resilient, strength about you, but also this softness and compassion and sort of this balance.
I hope so. Yeah.
I'd love to hear, how much of that's been intentional? When you look back and you look at kind of how all of this has shaped you into who you are today, how much of that did you decide, how to turn it into and walk me through kind of the journey from.
I feel like almost all of it is intentional. There have definitely been times in my life where I've struggled. And like when I lost my little sister, she actually died when she was 19. So she lived
and she was only supposed to live 2 years?
2 years, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So she actually lived a really long time. But, it's never enough. But yeah, like when she passed, I felt like I was lost in the world. She really meant like so much to me, and I was in the Air Force, and I didn't have family. I felt very alone, I think. But I've gone through therapy and that, that's been wonderful. I have
run 100-milers.
Yeah, I run. My trail's my therapy. But also, I would say the majority of it is intentional. I'm just not gonna go down another path. Like, I just want to keep moving forward. We have this one life. I don't want to waste it being unhappy with things that I can't control, and you can't control the past. So
how's it changed your approach to motherhood? Because I'm sitting here and I'm loving seeing, you guys here together. And like I said, my first 2 guest podcast, and I'm actually going to have some questions for Addie here in a second, but, knowing that, how's that changed? Because I think it's so amazing because generational traumas are so easy to pass on.
Yeah.
It's so easy to be bitter and, keep the same toxic traits and vicious cycles happening from generation to generation to generation. It's very uncommon for somebody to break them. Yeah. And you've clearly broken them.
Sure.
Probably now we have a whole new set that, Addie will get to work through.
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear how, knowing your background and your dad and the drugs and, the abuse in the home and your mom leaving and your sister and all these things piling up.
Yeah.
How's that changed your perspective of your responsibility as a mom?
Oh, I just take it very seriously, and I want to be the best mom possible. And so I don't know. I think, she knows a lot of, she knows my story, obviously. We talk about it, and I think it's important for us to just be able to talk about things like that. But yeah, I guess, to answer your question, it's one of my top priorities is to be a wonderful mother to her, and to not pass down all of that, trauma. And I think I'm doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I'd say so. Especially with everybody's cool, colorful hair, and right after petting all the animals and all of that fun stuff. Because did you have?
You might have to ask her that question.
I've got plenty of questions for Addie. Just all the hard ones are going to be for Addie. So another one that I'm curious about, because obviously I kind of talked about this observation I have of you of simultaneous strength and softness in a very good way. So much of that has come from the trauma, the hard stuff. It's something I've wrestled with, because I've got 3 kids and how I can make them strong and resilient without the traumas, without all of those things. And I'm just curious if you have advice on that, or thoughts, or an approach, or
no. I'll take your.
Come on. I thought you had it all figured out.
No, I don't have it all figured out. I definitely struggle with that, because I want her.
We want to be strong.
I want her to be strong, and I want her to be independent and self-reliant, and to have high self-esteem, and all of those things that make you an awesome adult. I think sports is one way to do it. I have her mow the lawn now.
Great.
And she's like, I can't do it, but
it's really boring.
Yeah.
Is it hard?
Is it hard?
I suffer a lot doing it.
Good. There's one then.
So I think things like that are ways to toughen her up a little bit. Without having to go through the stuff that I went through.
Right. Mowing the lawn is probably a healthier path to strength than these other ones.
Yeah, now she's on the swim team, so she's learning how to push through when it gets hard, and I think sports is one way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question for Addie. So you've seen your mom run 100 miles, 100 milers. I want to know, what do you think when you're watching your mom, suffering and running really far and running 100 milers? What do you think when you're watching her?
I never watch her because I can't see her.
Because she's far away?
What
about the finish?
Yeah, what about the finish line?
I'm hungry.
Yeah, I understand that for sure. Does it make you want to run? Or does it make running look hard?
No, never.
After my first 100 miler, I was talking to my son he's 6, and I asked him if he wants to go running with me, and he said, yeah, but not 100 milers.
Right.
I don't ever have to do that again.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. She, I don't know. There have been times where she's like, maybe one day.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
All right.
Not at all.
But swimming and other sports like that?
Swimming.
Yeah.
You like it?
Yes.
Okay. Nate, hey.
Of course.
So tell me then, because obviously, and you'd mentioned, sort of starting to run when you're 16, and we talked about, some of the benefits of, therapy and the formal ways of processing. And then I joked about running, obviously being, but very sincerely, it is. When did you get serious about running? You mentioned that you started about 16. I'd love to hear more about your running journey too.
Sure. So at 16.
By the way, I forgot to do this in your introduction, so I have to mention it now.
Okay, what?
On the cover of Ultra Running Mag.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was cool.
I was all excited about mentioning that, and I forgot when I introduced you. So for everybody listening, we're talking to a real ultra runner.
No. Yeah, no, that was pretty cool. Okay, so at 16, when my stepmother and my family moved to Maine, I stayed behind. I had a job. I was working for a farmer. And then I ended up working for a veterinarian, a local vet in town. But I wanted to play sports. All my friends were playing sports. But I had never played softball. I had never played volleyball. I'm too short for basketball. And I had never played soccer. So I thought, well, maybe I could try track. And they'll pretty much accept everyone. So I walked onto the track team and just practiced, and I was really, really bad in the beginning. I mean, really bad. But at the end of the season, I had improved, like significantly. I remember I was like placing 3rd and 4th in races, and I thought that was pretty cool. And so I just it was a form of therapy in a way. I started feeling good about myself, having better self-esteem. It was something that I saw progression as I put in the work. And so I really enjoyed that. All summer long, because that was my junior year, all summer long, I ran. And my senior year, I joined cross country. I joined the soccer team and did track again. And I loved it. I mean, I really saw a lot of improvement that second year especially. And then I graduated and I was like, oh, now what? Yeah. And I just kept running. I would sometimes run from my house to my cousin's, which was like 12 miles away. And they thought I was crazy. But I loved it. It was, and it was Florida too. So really hot.
Right. And humid.
And humid. But all my friends were going off to college and I was like, oh my God, like why I want to go to college, but it was just too late. Like there was no preparation for me to go to college. So, I was like, well, and luckily I had some of my friends' parents, they sat me down at their kitchen table and I remember them just saying, what are you going to do with your life? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I can't go to college. And they're like, you could.
Because at this time you're living out in front of your grandparents' house.
Yeah, on the side.
Right.
Yeah, they have their home and then my travel trailer was off to the side.
You're essentially, though, independent. You're
living
in a travel trailer.
I never asked them to go anywhere or
right.
I was doing my own thing.
Adult.
Yeah. I would use their bathroom or kitchen, but essentially I would come and go as I pleased.
Yeah, and I never thought about how important even just like those adult role models of talking about college in the future. That never even crossed my mind. So anyway, that's so where that came back from.
No, it's so important, and I'm really grateful because they're like, you can be something. What do you can be more. Like you're not stuck there. I felt stuck. At the time I did feel stuck. I was working for a veterinarian. On the weekends I would work for the farmer that I had worked for years, selling produce at the market. And it wasn't enough money to get ahead, right? So I was always just getting by. And but because they kind of planted that seed telling me that I could be more, that I could go to college, I started looking at options, and I found the military would take me. So I enlisted right before, a few months before 9/11.
Wow.
Yeah. And then 9/11 happened, and I tried to back out because I didn't want to go to war. Like, I was super afraid to go to war. I was only 19.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah. I was just, I was like,
How powerful, and I want to talk about that too, but I just, it's so cool for me to hear that someone believed in you and that was enough I've heard that for a long time, that all we need is one person that believes in us, that truly believes in us. And cheers for us louder than we're cheering for ourselves at the time, or whatever it might be, to kind of open up eyes. And it sounds like that was a pretty important moment, because that got you looking. Yeah. That got started looking.
It just planted
realize
the
that there's a future out there, or however it worked, which that's fascinating to me, that just started the train of events.
Totally.
And so then we enlist right before 9/11.
Yeah.
And of course, who wants?
I do.
No one wants to go to war.
No.
So walk me through that. But you're locked in.
I'm locked in. Yeah. But because I had chosen a job that would have put me more in the war zone, I begged my recruiter to let me change my job. And because I had already signed the contract and everything, there was a lot of paperwork that needed to be done to kind of change jobs prior to going to basic training. And so I got put in the delayed entry program. It's called DEP. And I was actually in DEP for a whole year before I got to go to basic training. So I went to basic training on September 10th, 2002.
Wow.
So it was a year after 9/11. And I remember like my first morning of basic training, I was laying in bed just fearful that they're going to come in and start yelling at us.
Right.
And
like the movies.
Yeah, and they didn't because they were all at the 9/11 ceremony. It was 1 year after, after everything came down. So they were all at the ceremony, and as soon as they were done with the ceremony, that's when they came in. And then every other morning was super early. But we had that one morning where it was like...
It's like false hope.
Yeah.
We get to sleep in here.
Right. Yeah. But we were all awake, just like laying in our beds, afraid to get up.
What was that like going through basic? Because, and the timeline is a little bit blurred for me, but obviously we're in the thick of the conflict at that point.
Well,
and
no, actually we weren't.
Okay.
Afghanistan, yes. But I served in Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Got it.
So OIF. And that actually didn't happen until March of 2003.
Okay, so
I was in
2 years in.
I was 1 year.
Okay, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the delay and then.
Yeah.
Got it.
So I was, but I ended up deploying to Baghdad in August of 2003. So the war had been going on for maybe 4 months, and I deployed to Baghdad.
No wonder you can run 100 meters.
Yeah. And that was also really scary. I cried when they told me I was deploying. In the Air Force, you deploy alone.
Yeah, I would love to hear, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
You get the word that you're going to deploy. Walk me through that. What's the feeling? What's the thought?
My supervisors came in and they said, and I actually worked for a cop squadron. I was like their IT person, and kind of like their admin person. And I had no stripes. I was like fresh out of basic training. And they came over and they said, hey, we got to talk to you. You just came down on orders to go to Iraq. And I was like, tears. Like, I didn't want to go to war.
Primary emotion.
Fear. Fear. Absolutely. Fear of the unknown. Fear of, fear of death. Fear of other people dying. Yeah.
And they make you deploy alone, you said?
Okay. So the Air Force, unless you belong to like a fighter wing, unit or something like that, unless you're like attached to an aircraft, most of the time, or like a cop squadron, like if the cops were deploying, they would have deployed as a unit. But because I was one little admin IT person attached to a cop squadron, I deployed all alone. Jeez. I didn't have a unit to deploy with.
So you're now people you've never met?
Yeah.
Like fresh to, holy cow.
Yeah. It was crazy. And I arrive in, it's called BIAP, Baghdad International Airport. And the U.S. had taken over the flight line and we kind of turned it into our own airport. I arrive in BIAP and I just remember getting off the C-130 and like 130-degree heat just hits you. And also the plane engines are like pushing it at you.
Got exhaust.
And it was like, oh my God. And I like walk in and I'm like, hello, Airman Walton here to report. And they're like, okay, we don't know where you're going, so have a seat. And I just sat in the airport terminal waiting for them to find a place for me. And they ended up sending me to the Republican Palace, so in the green zone. And I worked for, it was like the personnel office until they were finding like a place to put me. I ended up, one of my first assignments was inventorying Uday Hussein's personal belongings. So
Wow.
Saddam had Uday and Qusay, his sons, and when we bombed his home, which was also in the green zone, everything that was salvageable, we confiscated and put into the palace, into a basement. Nobody had access to this stuff. And they assigned me the role to inventory it. And I was like, okay, cool. And so I was just down there, like, looking at his books. I mean, pipes, swords, walking
What was
stick.
that like?
It was insane. I mean, I have pictures.
Did you feel like you got to know him?
Was
it like
there were family photos. I mean, I have,
Wow.
I had pictures of me holding his family photos and all kinds of stuff. Figurines that he collected. Like,
that is...
Yeah.
Gosh, I love those little stories because who would have thought that, of course, that things like that happen. But, when I think of it, I just think of, the stuff that we see on TV and, the all of those other stories that happen along the way. At that point, is it still scary? What's the vibe? What's the emotions like now?
So, I would say it took about 2 weeks before, like, you kind of become desensitized to, because we were getting rocketed and mortared all the time, like a couple times a week, sometimes a couple times a day, and then we'd go like a day or two without anything, and then we'd get attacked again. And so you feel it, right? Like sometimes you feel the ground rumble, sometimes it's just like an alarm that goes off and everyone has to go down to the basement. There were times like we had one attack where it landed in our parking lot where we all parked our vehicles, and like our vehicles got damaged.
Wow.
But the first 2 weeks, sometimes I would go back to my room and cry. And luckily I was staying in the palace at the time, so I felt very safe in the palace because, I mean, his palace was fortified.
Yeah.
It was really good materials and,
right.
and sturdy. It wasn't getting blown up, at least.
And so you're at least feeling safe
in the palace.
Are you feeling lonely? I mean, do you still have like a group now? Are you
not yet at this point? No. It wasn't until I got assigned to the governance and human rights office that I found my people.
You've got a team,
Then I became part of their team, and I was the military assistant to the director of governance. So I kind of became like the office security person, which was really funny because I'm like smaller than everyone, but I had a military weapon, and a lot of them were civilians out of Washington. Not all of them had weapons.
Wow.
So I was sort of like their military person in the office that would like protect them if we left base, which we often did.
Right.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
And then all of it became, and this is what people experience in war zones. They become desensitized, and it kind of becomes the norm. And people we're adaptable.
Yeah.
We adapt to our surroundings, and so that's just what happened. It kind of became the norm, and I stopped crying, and I stopped feeling lonely, and I adapted.
And which it seems like at this point you're good at adapting.
Yeah, I
mean, some forced adaptations for 20 however many years at that point. Do you think that our ability to adapt, do you think that's a good thing? Like the fact that humans can adapt in those hard situations, whether it's life or war or ultras or whatever, that we can, I don't know. Because it's like the trials don't go away.
Right.
We just start to deal with them differently.
Absolutely. And a lot of it is here in what's the alternative, right? Like if you don't adapt, like, do you want to be in a place where you're feeling lost all the time? You're not feeling, your best self. I think being able to adapt allows you to feel,
like almost almost like we're in control.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you pointed to it's all here, with our mind.
Yeah.
I want to hear more about that from you. Because you clearly have an incredibly strong mind and, your mindset. And I know we're not perfect, but somebody that has a story like you have, and we've touched, probably we've scratched the surface.
Yeah,
I mean, I know that there are hundreds of other stories and anecdotes, and I'm sitting here with my jaw on the floor, in awe with you and your story and all of that. I want to hear about how through all of this, you've got the mindset that you have, this ability to adapt that we've talked about, and, how you're now applying that to life, because it almost seems like now we talked about the film and all these things, but you've almost now shifted to where you're sharing the mindset. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but from what I've seen on, social media and your film and that, it's like, I don't know. I almost am going to say that you've mastered it, and I don't know if that's true, but that you're able to harness it and share it, and get some good messages out there. And I just want to hear about that, your mindset, and where you're at with it now, and your ability to share it with people. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I always feel like we're learning, right? Like I definitely haven't mastered anything, but I think it helped, like, having my little sister in my life, who I watched her fight these battles, and she did so and always came out with like a smile on her face. And I don't know, maybe part of it is just in my family genetics to like look at the bright side. I'm not really sure, but I saw that in her, like all her struggles. She really could have like been sad most of her days. She wanted to walk, she couldn't walk. She, wanted to play with us. We'd have to sit in front of her if she were playing. She couldn't go outside and ride horses with us. And when we were at the beach, she wanted to go in the water, but it was kind of dangerous at times. So she always like had a smile on her face and still was happy just to be alive. And I'm just happy to be alive. Like, I mean, we only have this one life as far as we know, and I like just want to take advantage of it. I don't want to waste it on things that I cannot control.
I love that. Do you feel like being able to observe your sister's strength and resilience and the fact that she's able to smile and, those things, did that help you with your perspective when you were going through your adversities? Like you had that as a benchmark almost, or how did observing her struggles impact how you dealt with yours?
I think all of mine just felt really minor compared to hers. I think putting things in perspective, like, I mean, we all struggle, and not to compare struggles. I don't think we should do that, because one person's struggle, it could be just as, harmful to one person than another person's struggle is to them. Like, I just don't think we should compare struggles. But I was able to see, like, man, she went through so much adversity and was still able to be a happy, loving, kind person. And so, when
it's like, I can too.
Yeah, I can too. Like, yeah. And I should.
What an empowering mindset of like, because it's so easy when things are going wrong, and they go wrong for us all the time,
sure.
To, oh, woe is me,
right.
Or, I had a bad day or whatever. What a powerful thing to say, but I can still be happy. Like, I can still make the most of it.
It comes down to like your mindset. Do you want to have the warrior mindset, or do you want to have a victim mindset? I never feel like I want to be the victim. Like, it isn't in me to want to be a victim. I want to be a warrior. And so
I love that. Does life get easier or do we get stronger?
That's a good question. I think we get stronger. For sure, we get stronger.
Yeah, I do too, unfortunately.
Yeah. But also, if you can change your mindset to having this like warrior attitude, I feel like things do get easier. Not everything has to be a crisis, and if you can just kind of look at things a little bit differently with things are what they are. Like, some things you can't control, and that's okay. Like, worry about the things that you can.
Right.
And not the things that you can't, you know.
And I think that's where, for me, ultras are such a powerful microcosm for, life and all that.
Yeah.
And, we're here. My team is, here at this Airbnb. You met some of them, but they joke after I run ultras that they get Zen Ben for a few days at the office, because it puts me in this different mindset of,
for sure.
like the problems at work don't feel as big.
I like that,
and, they are obviously giving me a hard time and, messing with me. But it's true. I get into a state where, I don't know, I feel... I just feel like you had mentioned, like the way we look at the problems changes how huge they are. Mm-hmm. Like all of a sudden the thing at work isn't that stressful.
Right.
It's not as bad as, how much pain I was in last week.
True.
Or, whatever it might be.
Totally. I think also it just builds like the muscle up here.
It's like
you're just getting stronger.
You're almost, and this is not the way to say it, but you're almost getting good at being miserable.
Right.
And it's not the right. But, But it's like, I've been here before. I can do hard things.
Yeah.
I can mow the lawn. I can, go through all these life adversities. Mm-hmm. I'm capable. That's what it is. It's affirmation that we're capable.
Yeah.
Of overcoming the thing.
Absolutely.
We don't get good at being miserable. We get more confident in our ability to overcome it. It's probably a better way to word it.
For sure.
So I want to hear about that, because I obviously have admired you and your ultra running, career and everything that you bring to that. How has that worked into all of this? When did you start getting serious about the longer distances? And just I want to talk a little bit about running.
Sure. So I ran all through, like, when I was in the Air Force. I just kept running. Were you able to run when you were deployed? Yes, but it was really hot in the summer, of course, especially. And so I remember like going out for a run and it being 130, and I like made it a mile.
Yeah.
And I came back and they were like, "You went running?" I was like, "I tried." But yeah, we would run at night. There was a group. I found a group. Actually, they were called the Hash House Harriers. And I ended up just running with them in the evenings. And then, after I was deployed, I still ran. I ended up going back to my original duty station where I deployed from, which was Maxwell in Montgomery, Alabama. And after, working for the wing commander there, I put in to try to get orders to Korea, and I actually got them. So I deployed to Korea. Not deployed. I got stationed in Korea. It was supposed to be a short term, but I ended up doing a long term, which is 2 years.
2 years in Korea.
2 years in Korea. And while I was there, I ran my first half marathon. So I ran the Seoul half marathon.
How cool. Your first half marathon was in Korea.
Yeah, that was super cool. And I just kept running. I ended up getting out of the Air Force after 5 years. And it wasn't until I was working for the government over in Germany. So I worked for the U.S. government at the military hospital in Germany. That I decided I wanted to run my first marathon. And so I signed up for the Athens 25th, 100th anniversary.
What a great first marathon.
It was so cool. Really special. And I just remember running, the last part, you run through the stadium, right? It's like 800 years old. And I ran through the stadium and I was like, what? I felt the energy. And after I finished, I went back to the hotel and I looked online and I found Ultra.
Right after your first
Right
marathon.
like at the hotel. I went back to
That's crazy.
Yeah.
After my first marathon, I was like, I literally handed my wife my shoes. I was like, throw them away. I'm done forever. Took me like 3 days, not 1 day. But
I went back to the hotel from Athens and I found an Ultra that was 6 months out. And it was in Davos, Switzerland, and which isn't too far from Germany. So I signed up for it. And that was the Swiss Alpine 78K.
Your first was a 78K.
Yeah. So not quite 50 miles, like 48 miles.
But who's counting?
Yeah, I don't know. Something like that. And I ran that and I was hooked. I was hooked. I never looked back. So 2010, I think, is when I ran my first Ultra.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then obviously...
I just, then I signed up for Gran Canaria. I signed up for TDS, one of the UTMB trails races. I ended up DNFing that race. That was my first DNF. So I think my third Ultra would have been TDS, and I didn't make it. I almost got hypothermia.
Oh, geez.
It rained the whole time. And because I didn't really know what I was doing, I didn't pack any clothes in a dry bag. I just put them in my hydration pack.
I would do the same thing.
And I thought that would keep them warm or dry. And so when I, got to I don't know, the halfway point, I pulled out all my wet clothes.
Your new dry clothes are now wet clothes. Yeah.
So, and I, just because I had stopped and it was nighttime at that point, I just got hyperthermia and ended up having to go to the med tent.
How long was that one?
That would have been 128K, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Something like that at the time.
And when you're doing this, do you have, early on, or in your ultra career, you have crew, pacers, or you have a community? Are you going at it alone?
I had friends. Actually, I had an ex that he and I did those together, the Gran Canaria, and then TDS. And and because I DNF'd that, I went back. I think I ended up running Transvolcania. I did a bunch of other races. You'd have to look at Ultra Sign Up. And then I went back to TDS and I actually crushed it. I did really well. I
back
think
for
I did.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I placed 7th in that one. So
awesome.
I felt good.
Do you have, because you've got sponsors and, where did all of it, I'm kind of curious about the progression and how, I don't know, how it all sort of has evolved and your goals and where you're headed with it.
Well, I have some sponsors, yes. X Endurance, which is one of my newer ones, but I'm really loving their products. Sans Milbar, who I kind of already mentioned, introduced me in the filmmakers. Hoka, that was very serendipitous the way it happened. I actually was taking a flight to to California to run with Billy Yang, and because he a bunch of his friends he invited to rent a home in California, and we did the Backbone Trail. Anyway, I was on the plane to go to that. We were just hanging out for the weekend and running. And I sat next to the Hoka rep, and I was like, man, you're all decked out in Hoka. I love Hoka. I've been running a Hoka since 2013. And he's like, really? He's like, let me give you my card. And he gave me his card and I became a flyer.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was 4 years ago.
How cool. What a good example of, somewhere I was reading the other day that shyness is expensive. It's expensive to be shy.
True.
You'd be amazed at what can happen in life if you just, ask. And not that you didn't ask.
No.
But talking and
chatting. Well, I just
and...
saw all of his Hoka attire and I'm like, man, you have some good gear on.
So cool.
He ended up giving me his card, and I had been running in Hoka since 2013. So
there was some authenticity there.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I haven't ran in another shoe. And I
was trying to have one here on the table for our product placement. Yeah. I'll zoom out. But.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know.
Because you had talked about early on when you were in high school, experiencing progression in running. And I picked up from you that had sort of fueled your fire to keep going. Like you had seen that some of the work was paying off and you were getting better.
Sure.
And so I'm curious now, because now I'm not going to ask you how old you are, so don't answer that. But now we're,
I've already dated myself.
Years into it. Now that you're 29. But I have to think, just even the little bit I get to know you now with your personality, that progression idea still matters. I mean, is that still how it is? Are you still trying to push yourself and your limits? Are you trying to progress? Are you in a different space now where you're just enjoying things? What?
I don't know. I mean, I do always want to do my best, but it is hard to train properly and mother and work and she has piano and she has swim and I co-parent, so every other week I don't have her at home, so I try to run more during those times and that has actually kind of worked. I just did 2 months ago now. I did Gorge Waterfalls 100K.
Saw that.
I did that with this type of training where I have a week where I'm not putting in much mileage, and then a week where I'm doing a little bit more. It definitely isn't what it used to be. I when I was back in Europe, and even several years ago here in Colorado, I was able to train more consistently and just better. And I think my performances were better. So
how do you...
I struggle with it because I do know that I'm capable of so much more, but I have a house to pay for and I have bills to pay for, and I don't know how to do it all and train properly.
I relate to that.
Yeah.
How do you balance it? I mean, because, I have a very supportive wife. I own my own company.
Yeah.
I've got all the flexibility in the world, and I still
I know.
balance.
It's hard.
It's like the birthday party or the, now that my kids are starting sports and, and in fact, part of the chasing greatness, the whole idea of that is this idea of kind of holistic greatness.
Yeah.
And, I want to be the best father I can be. I want to be the best husband I can be. I want to be the best business owner I can be, the best runner I can be, friend, whatever. How do you balance it? Because it seems like you balance it well.
Yeah. I mean, I try. I definitely sometimes wish I could be better and train better. But I also, one of my main purposes here on earth now is to be the best mom to her. So even though I may be failing a little bit in my training, I still feel like, okay, I'm doing a good job with her. So I guess I find, I don't know. I guess I'm able to just be happy with what I am doing and know that I'm doing my best at,
which is all any of us can do.
Yeah.
Right? Is our best.
My
grandfather would always say, all you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. I'm curious though, because, and I wrestle with this too, which is why I'm curious.
Yeah.
There's kind of this idea of if we fill ourselves up, we can fill up others, right? If I'm doing the things that make me fulfilled, I have space to give it to my kids or my wife or whatever. What's your perspective on that? Because especially where, you co-parent, but when you are parenting, you're the parent.
Yeah.
That balance of being able to give it all to what's most important, which is being a mom.
Yeah.
But also knowing that, you have to fill yourself up too. Are they related? Do you struggle with that? Is it a tug of war?
Maybe internally I do a little bit. I think I just try to find balance in it all. I mean, you just said that in the question, but I think, sure, I struggle with it a little bit. But knowing that I'm doing a good job here kind of makes it all worth it.
Then all of a sudden, training less or having a different training doesn't feel as important.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do know, that if I trained better, I'm capable of a lot more.
Is that hard?
Yeah.
To know that? Because I think I could be capable of more too. I'm injury prone, so I have to just live with that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm always going to be injured, and I will always be a middle of the pack, slow.
Right.
You know, I'll be what I am. But I've wondered about that too. Like, man, if I could just avoid this thing or this, and maybe that's why ultra running is such a draw for a lot of, and this not you but me, average. You know, athletes, is because there's like these glimmers of greatness.
Yeah.
Like it feels attainable
for sure.
You know, to get to that mark if just these other things would have gone right or this other thing would have happened or whatever. I don't know. Is that how does that, is that hard to know that? Are you fine with that?
I mean, I guess I'm fine with it because
the priority is, because it's not the top priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if, you know, I had all the money in the world and I didn't have a mortgage payment and I didn't need my job, then maybe I could just train and like focus solely on training, which means, eating and sleeping during the day, you know, when you're not running, and like really taking it seriously. I just had Annie Hughes on my podcast, and, you know, when she's in training mode, she's training like a professional. You know, she's eating her breakfast, going for her runs, coming back, you know, eating again, taking a afternoon nap, maybe doing a second workout of the day, you know. And I've never been able to train that way.
Yeah.
I just haven't. And in a way, I'm like, oh man, what if? But I don't know how to like live the life, you know, have a home for her and like, you know.
Not the cards we were dealt.
Right.
Do you think that would take the fun out of it?
I don't know. Maybe, I feel like if you were like,
I don't know either. Part of me thinks like, man, that would be awesome. Yeah. And then I think about like, you know, when I was at the height of my 100-miler training, even that was starting to get, you know, gosh, I got to run a marathon today. You know, it's snowing outside.
I know.
But it's always interesting to think because, I don't know, the capability is there. Right. You know, the potential is there. But it's a lot like the other things that we've talked about. You know, you get the hand we were dealt and you deal with it the best way you can. And then on top of all that, you also still, you know, like we said, you're finding time though to podcast and, you know, being in the film. And then I wanted to talk about the nonprofit too, because I just think it's cool because you're finding time for these things, which is amazing. Because on paper, there is no time.
I know.
Tell me about the nonprofit.
Okay, so I started the nonprofit mostly to host a trail running camp for kids. And that's what we've been doing. I started it with my friend Joseph Gray and Brandon and Melissa Stepanovich. So the four of us are the primary coaches. And last year we had our inaugural year. We had 16 kids at the camp.
Wow.
It was a 2-day camp. And Hoka was one of our sponsors and donated shoes to every child. They're doing that again this year. Yeah. So Ultimate Direction was a sponsor and gave every kid a handheld and like a trash bag that they could carry along on the trail with them. A reusable one. We had, like Momentous, you know, gave us fueling, hydration stuff. And it was wonderful. Like we shared our passion with these kids, and it was great. And this year we already have, I think, 19 kids signed up.
Wow. So
July 24th through the 26th, we're having our second camp.
How cool. And same sponsors?
Same sponsors. Tonry, the sunblock company, they are one of our sponsors, and they gave every kid a bottle of sunblock. It's been great. Like,
what made you want to do that?
I think for one, there isn't like a trail running camp out there for kids, right? So there was kind of a need. I also felt like if it weren't for the people in my life that kind of mentored me at a young age, who knows where I would be. Mm-hmm. So like, I kind of wanted to give that back and do that for other kids, you know? And so one of our goals is to just make trails accessible to everyone, or at least show the kids that they're, you know, these trails are for everyone. And so we're hosting it kind of like in the city, like one of our city trails, Palmer Park. And we are...
Is that at Palmer Lake?
No.
Different place.
It's a different place. It's sort of like right in the middle of Colorado Springs. Cool. Yeah. And that way, like, kids from all over can come to it. My nonprofit is actually offering scholarships to many of the kids.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What are the ages? What?
2nd to 8th grade.
Wow. So you've got 2nd graders out there.
Yeah, she was out there. She was 2nd going into 3rd. So yeah.
How cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Really neat.
Thank you. Yeah.
Last few questions.
No worries.
Where are we headed? What are your goals? What's on the horizon? You know, whether it's running, life, nonprofits. Yeah. We talked about winning the lottery and being able to run forever,
Right.
You know, which I'll put the good vibes out there.
Thank you.
But because I can just tell that you're driven and you're finding these great outlets for your passion and for your energy and things like that. What's next? What's on the horizon? What are the goals?
Man, I hate this question. So much pressure. I don't know. I mean, I think I want to grow the camp. I actually could maybe see myself kind of turning the camp into more than just a one-time thing, and maybe even hosting multiple camps throughout the summer for kids. I personally want to start training better. It's going to be a little bit difficult with the summer being here, and like she's home from, you know, school and everything. But on the weeks that I don't have her, I hope to train better. I think I want to jump into the San Juan Solstice 50 miler. So I don't know. I mean, I don't have a registration, so it would just be me showing up and hoping that I get in.
Yeah.
And if not, I'll support my friends.
Come and run in the San Juans.
Yes.
And Addie can come and see the horses.
Ooh,
and the pony.
that would be wonderful.
And everything. We're actually on Saturday. My daughter turns 2. She just turned 2, and we're dressing Skittles up like a unicorn, and we're having a whole big birthday party. So I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
Whenever you guys are down in the San
so
Juans
cool.
or Durango,
Okay.
come and say hi to
Thank
the
you.
pony. You
Thank
love
you.
her. She's so much fun, and we've got the chickens and the whole
thank
thing
you,
too.
thank you.
It's great, but.
But,
Dreama.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have a lot, you know, I want to grow the podcast.
Which, by the way, I meant to mention that, and I'm trying to be cautious of our time.
No,
but
it's okay. Yeah, sorry.
the concept of your podcast is so cool. I think, you know, and I'm going to be a hypocrite right now. You know, the standard sort of podcast, there's so much, it's so noisy. A different kind of lifestyle approach to podcasting. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
I've thought forever a fun one would be, I call it first class podcast or first class conversations and podcasts on first class in an airplane. But you know, the Beyond the Trail, for anybody listening, check out Beyond the Trail podcast. It's so cool. Dreama has guests on, and they trail run or they trail walk so that you can talk, and you film it, I think, with a GoPro.
Yeah.
But it's so neat. I was talking to Sean about it who you met when you got here, and I was just saying and his response was, oh, that makes so much sense, because some of the best conversations happen on the trail.
This is why I started.
I love it. So seriously, huge fan of that
Cool.
and everything.
Thank you.
But I just wanted to tell you thank you for being who you are, for giving me the time, obviously, to pick your brain and, you know, putting in the effort in driving. But more so than that, for being vulnerable and being authentic and putting yourself out there. I just so adamantly believe that the world needs more of it. And when we get to hear stories like yours, and we get to see, even right now, you doing the very best you can, and you're doing a great job, by the way.
Thank you.
I don't think that most moms hear that enough, and I mean it so sincerely. You're doing a phenomenal job. But thanks for making the world a better place. And thanks for putting it out there, and all the great energy, and for sharing your story, and the nonprofit, and the great conversations and things like that. And also, thank you for being on my podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
For letting me pick your brain a little bit.
Absolutely.
And I mean it. It's a very sincere offer when you're in Durango or in the San Juans. We'll get Addie with the pony and all that. And Addie, thank you so much for being so good, and for being a part of my podcast, and for bearing with me on my first 2 guests. podcast because I was nervous and you made me feel comfortable. So I really appreciate that. But seriously, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.